live again. It's been what? 2 weeks? A week? 2 weeks? Yeah. So we're back. We're back. There's some. I don't know what happened in the last week. I think last week there was some. You had to pick Mercy up from the airport. And you had that barbecue and stuff like that. Remember?
Yes, I was starting my masters. Is what was happening there.
So
picking her up, and then we basically went. Anyway, that'll come. That'll come.
We'll get to that. But that's the reason why. But doesn't matter why we weren't here because we're here now, and that's all that matters. We're live on Facebook, YouTube. Some of you guys might be listening later on other podcast platforms. Welcome.
It doesn't make you a heathen.
It doesn't. There you go. Certified.
Confirmed.
Certified non-heathen.
Yeah.
But if you are here, if you are in watching live, say hello in the comments. I mean, I can't see them, but Warner can.
Oh, Eamon forgot his laptop.
Forgot my laptop. So it's just a phone today for me. But if you are here, Warner will be able to see. He'll shout some out if there's anything juicy on there. But if you're listening later on as well, please give us a review. Please let us know what you think of the podcast. If you have any questions, queries, comebacks, rebuttals, I don't know what other words to use. But if you've got anything from whatever we say, please let us know. Write a review. Let us know what you think. Any questions, whatever else. Because we're here to serve with you guys. We're here to talk about what you want to talk about. We're here to help you guys. That's what we're about. I think our whole tagline, Ezekiel keeps saying, is like two lads in a Bible or something. Yeah. So, boys banter Bible.
Nice.
So that's what we're all about. So yeah, it's good to be back. How has things been going? How's the past 2 weeks? What's been going on?
Past 2 weeks have been, they've been good for me. They've been very much different to the weeks before.
Yeah.
Because I have recently, as in last week, started my master's.
Yeah.
In theological studies. So the week that we weren't on, the Sunday we weren't on.
Yeah.
Was because we had like a little intro barbecue / first meeting.
Nice.
So that was from like 4:30 till about 7:30. And then had my first week, which went well. Is only like I'm basically only in 2 afternoons, but the way the workload is pretty much I've pretty much made those 2 afternoons 2 full days.
Yeah.
So that I can try and do as much as possible in those 2 days, and then like not need to do as much later on in the week.
Yeah.
It's like I basically have to read a book's worth of material.
Nice.
Per week.
Nice.
And that's for my main module, Christian Holiness and Biblical Perspective. And then I'm also learning Greek.
Ooh.
So like the first lesson was learn the alphabet and read. Okay, so it's none of this A, E. No. You got it. We were reading after like 20 minutes. You know what I mean? Luckily, I'd done like a few hours prep work beforehand. So that's my advice to it. If you're studying, if you know you're going to start something, get slightly ahead.
Yeah.
So that when you start, you'll either look really good or you'll be at the level of everyone else, rather than being like, oh.
Yeah.
So yeah, my week has been like, I'd say it was like 7.5.
That's good.
7.5, because I was a bit ill. There's like a bit of a cold going on. So, I basically just rode through the symptoms all week.
Yeah.
This past week, and then Thursday I was just like, something happened where it was like, oh, it's gonna be worse. So it was. So I couldn't really do much Thursday, but. Back in the saddle, not 100%, but back enough that I can live.
There does seem to be something going wrong. Because I had the other day at work, I started to get a bit of like a little tickle in the throat, and I'm like, oh, okay, what's going on? I start sniffing a little bit. So I was just like, right, I'm cutting this out. So I got some like soothers, took some stuff, juice, did everything that I usually do, caught it early, and it seems to have gone. But I mean, who knows? Who knows what's happening? Warner's gone to sort some out. Don't know what that is, so I'll just waffle for a bit. My 2 weeks, though, have been all right. I'm trying to think what I did. Just same old, really. Bit of work. It's not been a great for football. England were rubbish in these past couple of weeks. And then United have just lost 6-3? 6-2? 6-3? Is it 6-2 or 6-3? 6-3. I mean, it doesn't really matter if it's 3 or 2, 'cause still lost. We got absolutely battered. So, I mean, that's fun. It's not very nice, but it's fun. It's fun. Weddings coming along. I'm telling you, I know a lot of you guys are married out there or have been married. Are you maybe in the process of getting married? Some of yous. I'm telling you, stressful stuff. It's stressful. I didn't realize how much goes into marriage. How much goes into not marriage. Marriage as well, but a wedding specifically as well. There's just so much stuff. There always seems to be like some sort of problem around the corner. You think, oh, this is easy. This is going well. It's all happy days. And then all of a sudden, you turn a corner or you open a door and it just hits you in the face. So when you get off a plane in a hot country, or you walk out the airport in a hot country for the first time, just the heat hits you in the face. That's what it's like sometimes. You think it's all hunky-dory, and then all of a sudden, it's just like, boom. I'm like, oh, getting hit. So that's fun. But we're getting there. It's moving. We're getting closer. 6 weeks away? 7 weeks away? I can assure you there will not be a podcast on that week. Just so you can stick it in your diaries.
No, they won't. Forget it.
I'm not going to come the next day.
Hopefully the sound is done now, so let me know if I need to sort it out. Oh.
What was wrong with it? Just a bit fuzzy?
Dropping in and out or something.
Oh, dropping in and out.
Hopefully it's all right now.
But yeah, I mean, if I had to put a number on the weeks, I'd give it a 9.
Oh,
which is really low for me.
Oh dear.
And I think it mainly is because the rest of work stuff's all good, everything's all good. It's just football, we're just rubbish at football.
Yeah,
I think that's what brought me down a little bit.
Winter's not going to be a fun time. I mean, you never know. Always have some kind of hope, optimism, but
I didn't say anything. We'll see.
We'll just have,
If you don't know what we're talking about, the World Cup's coming up. Just if you don't know what we're referring to, the World Cup's coming up this winter. So
it's going to be really weird, especially for football fans, because you're going to go from Halloween period, straight into Christmas setup, but really heavy World Cup football everywhere. And then it's going to end of November, start December, World Cup finish. And then you've got like 2 and a bit weeks, and then it's Christmas. So it's going to be a really weird...
Very strange.
I think it'll be weird for like the culture of the country at that time. Because normally World Cups, people are like out in beer gardens. You know what I mean? Like a lot of places of work on Fridays will either give people the day off, or like you can watch the game in work, or like you have half a day or something. So I wonder how the culture of Britain will be.
Well, the thing is,
because I don't think has there ever been a Winter World Cup?
No, this is the first,
isn't it?
This is the first ever one, and it's like what you're saying. World Cup is synonymous with beer gardens, sun, like that kind of vibe. Whereas now it's going to be
barbecues.
it's going to be like wrap up warm, have a hot chocolate and a hot water bottle, watching England play. It's just it's a bit different.
Yeah.
And I know the games are, because it's in Qatar. The games are on, I think at some points in the group stages, they're on at 10 a.m., 1, 4, and then like 7 or 6. So
that's hard.
So the first England game is on a Monday or a Tuesday, and it's on at 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So it's just middle of the work day.
Crazy, that.
So I mean, that's just the weirdness.
That's a lot going. Anyway,
we'll move on. We
move.
We'll dive into what we're talking about. So if you remember a couple of weeks ago,
way back in the day now,
whenever we were last year, we talked about the Ephesians 4 ministry gifts.
We did a bit of setup work.
We did, because as a church,
if you didn't hear it,
go on, give them a summary.
And you're interested, go and listen to the.
Well, give them a summary. Give them a bit of.
Basically, the gifts were given by Jesus and continue to be given by Jesus, to make the church, to help the church be as much like Jesus as possible.
Yep. And
until we reach that measurement of being Jesus, like actually, not like, oh, I'm like Jesus, like you're Jesus. Yeah. they're going to continue to be given. And they all have different ways in which they do that. But overall, that's their job. That's their baseline thing. So
that's brilliant. So as we mentioned last time, we have been given kind of an instruction by Kerry, our apostle, who kind of oversees our church here and a bunch of others around the UK, to kind of explore this in a bit more detail, to kind of go into this.
Yeah.
I was thinking back the other day that in my lifetime, I don't think I've heard a dive into each and every single one of the missions. I've heard little things here and there, Bible school things, but never really done a deep dive. So it's important to kind of dive into it. So as we said, last time was a bit of setup, kind of setting up that what we're going to be speaking as a church here on a Sunday, but as well here on the podcast. And so today we're going to be looking at apostles.
Ooh. What's an apostle?
What's an apostle? What's it all about?
Yeah.
What does it mean? What do they do? All that.
Do they do anything?
Do they? Yeah.
How much money do they get?
How many vacation days do they get on top? So go on, Juana. Take us deep
into apostles.
Into the wind.
Okay, so first of all, we got to look at what is. Oh, something.
That's the coffee. That's the coffee machine.
The coffee machine. I could do with a coffee machine, because I'm tired at the moment.
A coffee machine right here.
Yeah, because I. I was telling Eamon that because of the masters, I'm trying to utilize my time better, which means I'm also trying to maximize the amount of time in the day I can use. So I'm trying to shift my sleeping hours so I can wake up earlier, so I can study in the morning and also study in the evening.
Well,
which means when you're in that shifting period,
it's a bit of getting
like
used to.
You really have to, like, that first week and a bit this is gross. Anyway, so apostles.
The
first thing to know, because it's like, what is this word? Do you know what I mean? Because if you don't know what the word is, then you end up defining things based off what you think it is or what you've been taught, and you might be. It's true, you could be completely wrong. So the word apostle means person sent.
Yeah.
Simple. That's it.
Easy.
So even though we say apostles, really what we're saying is person sent by Jesus. So all apostles, the whole point is that they are, you can think of them as a representation of Jesus to the church.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so then that's a really key thing to know, because then it means it's the person who is the apostle isn't so you don't choose, like, I'm going to be an apostle. That's like you could have that ambition, I guess, but it literally has nothing to do with that person being like deciding to, like, I want to pursue being an apostle.
Yeah.
Either Jesus has called you to be an apostle.
Yeah.
And he's gifted you to the church in that way, or he hasn't.
He hasn't.
Which, for me, like, the reason that's important is because there's a lot of using the Ephesians 4 gifts as like I don't know, as like a status symbol. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
definitely.
so you'll see a lot of proliferations of like pastor so and so, or like prophet so and so, or apostle so and so.
Yeah.
And they're not that thing, but because in the realm that they function in, that thing means a certain position or status or whatever.
Yeah.
Then like all of it gets a relatively blanket term. But actually, like an apostle is someone who is sent by Jesus, which changes the whole purpose and function of what an apostle is there for. Do you know what I mean? What do you think about that?
No, I think you're right. It's interesting because you do see it a lot. You know, we talk about a lot of the world, as we spoke about in the last one. A lot of the world still thinks that these gifts are gone and they're kind of they've finished and they've ended.
If you're wondering, we talked about that last week, so we won't delve into it this week. But if you want to know about that, just listen to it.
Yeah, it's worth listening to that one. So there's a whole group of people who think obviously they're finished and they're gone. But as we discovered in Scripture, that they're here to remain until we reach a certain point when we become like Jesus, as we kind of talk about this morning, which is very good. If you should listen to this morning as well. If you've got more you're wondering what it's all about and everything like that, listen to this morning's service. Ezekiel did a great job. But then there's a whole camp that abuse this, and they kind of use this, as you were saying, for a status symbol or kind of self-appointed. You see that quite a lot, and there just seems to be like I think they're the kind of the two extremes. You see a lot of people say it doesn't exist, or you see a lot of people who say it does exist, but it doesn't mean what you're actually talking about. It's not a gift sent by God. It's more of a status symbol and things like that. So I think you do see that quite a lot. But it is important to I think that. Because we can attest apostles and things like that. It's not just, which we'll probably dive into at some point, or maybe in a little bit I'll touch on. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So some of like the super simple stuff, which I can't remember if we touched on it last week, but anyway, this is related, obviously. So Ephesians 2. Mm-hmm. Where do I want to start from?
Start from Ephesians 1.
Literally start from Genesis 1, verse 1. Ephesians 2, verse 19. So then you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God, built on the foundation of the apostles and the prophets. Yeah. Christ Jesus himself being the cornerstone. So this is really important as far as both apostles and prophets, what their specific function is in helping us as ministers reach the full measure of the stature of Jesus. I think that's it, isn't it?
Yeah,
the measure of the stature of the fullness. Maybe I think because I think it's 3. Anyway, whatever that crazy measurement of being so much like Jesus that there's no like, is this person Jesus? Like, all you see is Jesus. And so both of them, and particularly apostles, are involved in building a strong foundation for the household of God. The members, so here we see the citizens, the saints, the members, the household. So it's pretty clear it's not about anything other than people. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like they're not here to have the most the most important TV series. Yeah. They're not here to have the coolest user interface. They're not here to have the most followers on Twitter. They're here to make sure that the people of God have a strong foundation. That's the whole point. Yeah. With the caveat of Jesus being the measuring line of how that foundation is built and looks like, and do you know what I mean? So the dimensions of the foundation that their job is to build is based off Jesus. Yeah. So one really easy way of being is this person an apostle or is this person not an apostle? It will sound really stupid, but honestly, it's are they following the way that Jesus lived and taught about how to build, and how Jesus taught and lived about how to build community, how to treat people, what the priorities are. Those things sound well, of course they would because they're an apostle, but there's anyway.
We won't get into all that.
But one way to notice or to judge whether this person is an apostle or not is what's their guideline. Yeah. And if you take their guideline and their foundation and you put it next on top of Jesus's, do those two blueprints line up? Yeah. Or is there discrepancy? And there might be discrepancy, but if there's, because obviously even apostles are still getting to grow more and more like Jesus.
Of course.
But if you put the 2 and 2 together and one's a triangle, one's a square, you're hang about. Something strange is going on here. Do you know what I mean? this isn't fitting no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And so it might mean that they have one side that may look like Jesus, but if there's like 17 other sides that don't, then that's not the same. Whereas if what they're doing looks like Jesus is probably the best way that I can say that. Then it means then that they are a person sent by him. Because it's like if you give me a message to tell someone, and then I say a completely different message. Yeah. Like, how does that validate? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Or if someone just comes up to me now and said, "Oh, Eamon says this thing," and it's like something that you say all the time, and they got it completely wrong, then you'd be like, "I don't know who that person is because I never say that, and I wouldn't ever say that." Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And sometimes that's how some people will use Jesus, because they know that is a way that you can get a lot of stuff that you might want. Do you know what I mean? So you can build a following, staying close enough to Jesus that people want to stay, and far enough away that you can still get all the benefits that you want. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So a really key part of how apostles are working is that they build a foundation for the believers, for the rest of the church in Jesus. Do you know what I mean? So that's we'll dive in a little bit on some of the other parts. But what do you think of?
Yeah, it's interesting because it says built on the foundations of the apostles, prophets, which Christ himself, the cornerstones. We know, as we were saying, the cornerstone's obviously the guiding point of where the building's going, basically. Yeah. But if you start building on top of something that doesn't have foundations,
good luck.
It ain't good. It ain't gonna work. It's gonna come crumbling down. And it's not going to be great. You're going to have a big bill, and maybe someone's going to get hurt. Yeah. But so it's built on the foundation of the apostles and the prophets. So they're kind of the foundation point of which the rest gets built up on top of, and that's important, as you were saying. Like, the foundation is working in line with the cornerstone to mark the outlines of the build, however you want to use that analogy. But for the rest to kind of be built on top and to kind of build upon and whatever else. Yeah. So it's important that, as we've established in the last week or the week before, whenever it was, that they're still here for today, but they're not just here kind of just as fluffy titles or fluffy kind of like, hey, look, you've got a really big church. There you go. You're an apostle, you're a prophet, whatever else. But they're there. It's a serious matter. They're there to kind of help build the foundation of what God is doing until we reach that point of unity and fullness and everything like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so let's look at 1 Corinthians 4 from verse 14, I think. Where should we finish? 14 to 17, why not? I do not write these things to make you ashamed, but to admonish you as my beloved children. For though you have countless guides in Christ, you do not have many fathers. For I became your father in Christ Jesus through the gospel. I urge you then, be imitators of me. That is why I sent you, Timothy, my beloved and faithful child in the Lord, to remind you of my ways in Christ, as I teach them everywhere in every church. So that again kind of highlights what the foundations mean. So part of the role of an apostle is to teach the church and teach churches in the ways of Christ. And sometimes, like, if you hear an apostle speak, or like people might find apostles like, oh, they're kind of boring, because they a lot of times they'll talk about things that are like, when you break it down, it's really simple. Do you know what I mean? And the reason is because their job is to make sure that you have strong foundations in the word. And so obviously, if you've got weak foundations, there's no point like, oh, I got this really nice bookcase, because your foundation's rubbish. So we got to go back to the foundation and lay it again and lay it again and lay it again until you're strong in it. Because I find it funny with Paul, because I feel like he was probably quite a mischievous guy, because there's like a bunch of places where he was like, oh, I would like to tell you this thing, but you're not ready, so here's like a really simple version of it.
Yeah.
Or he's like, normally when I'm around other people who are more mature, like we talk about all this extra stuff, but with you guys, I'm just gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna use short words, really simple stuff, and part of that is the role of an apostle. Like a father. You often see this language of apostles being like a father. They're very much act as the role of father to the church. Their job is to help the house, the household of God, grow and become mature. So every apostle, their aim is this congregation that is a baby should become a toddler, and then should become a teenager, and then should become an adult, with the ultimate goal being like they look like Jesus. Do you know what I mean? So that's every true apostle's goal. I'll say, because we should differentiate between actual apostles and people who just like blah, blah, blah. But that's their goal, and that's kind of so you'll see a lot of frustration in the Bible with Paul and like some other apostles, where there's a bit of like differentiation between that. Do you know what I mean? They're like, hey, come on, okay, I'm being gracious, but now I have to come with a different amount of authority, because the household it's just like, do you know what I mean? Like, obviously different fathers have different expectations in life, but generally the general idea of a father is they look after their house, they raise the children in a certain way, and they also protect the house. And if there needs to be reprimand, there is reprimand, but it's always for the benefit of them growing up to being independent people. Do you know what I mean? And so that's the same thing with the apostles. They teach us the foundations, and they make sure that a congregation has the super basic things down. Like let's read them actually, just in case, because people might not know what. So we'll read. This is only some of the foundations, but it is a few of them. So Hebrews 6. Let me switch up my version. So these are some of the foundations that they're involved in. Surely we do not need to start again with the fundamental importance of repenting from evil deeds, placing our faith in God. You do not need further instruction about baptisms, laying on of hands, the resurrection of the dead, and eternal judgment. And so, God willing, we will move forward to further understanding. So every apostle's job is, I want to get you to the further understanding part. But to do that, I want to make sure that the foundation is built well. Because I'm sent by Jesus. So even though I'm here for your benefit, the true judge of the work that I'm doing is the person who sent me, and I don't want to misrepresent them and build something that I wasn't told to build, or assume that I'm supposed to build in a certain way and I've built it wrong. You know what I mean? So that's the really big macro job, is that they're the father to the house. So that's also part of why elders are also fathers to the house. Because elders are put in place by apostles on behalf of the apostle. Do you know what I mean? So the elders are doing the apostle work on behalf of the apostle. Do you know what I mean? In that line of succession. So that is why there's a bit of debate amongst scholars and stuff about what are the requirements of being an apostle, because it's not like eldership or deaconing where
it's very clear,
where there's some specific kind of
lists,
not necessarily checklist, but like recommended CV. Do you know what I mean? Like this is like what you should have. There's not as many clear instances of that, but generally, like pretty much most of, I would say, a good 95% of apostles that we see in the New Testament are men. Which this is just me now going on my own thing, so you don't have to necessarily take it as whatever. But because of the father role, it's to me, it's very clear that that's part of the reason why Jesus chose 12 men for the apostles, because there is something about that fatherness heart, which doesn't mean that they have to be fathers, but just in the way that God has designed and created things, that's how he's decided he wants to do it. Do you know what I mean? So we, as a church grouping, church-related churches, we believe that apostles are men, and part of that is the governance and authority. That fatherhood, do you know what I mean, in the house. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going through in prep for this. I was going through some notes. I can't remember what it was. Last year or so, a few of us, we both went. I think Ezekiel went. A few others from the church as well went to like a leaders' day or something like that in the Rock. We was it Big Shed, and we talked about apostles. So we had about, I think, 4 or 5 sessions from Brian Shutt and David Lyon, who are both apostles who we relate to. If you don't know those guys, the videos are somewhere. I don't know if they're online or something like that. But they were excellent. They're excellent. But along those lines, Brian Shutt said something that kind of goes along with that, and he was talking like in the context of saying that there's a lot of chaff teaching going around right now. And he said this. He said, apostles are here to keep you safe in teachings of God, to inspect, correct, and inject, not like a sniffer dog, but as your father.
Oh, Brian.
You just hear him, can't you?
Yeah, literally.
They're not here not like a sniffer dog, but as a father. They're there to see how you're getting on and encourage, and if necessary, guide you in the right direction. So similar to what you were saying, that kind of their role is to kind of help firm up those foundations and build those foundations as a father to house to, as it says, as Brian was saying, point you in the right directions and kind of make sure that you're so strong in the word that you're not kind of just getting swayed. We looked at that last week in the last one, didn't we? Where so getting swayed from side to side, and you kind of you hear a bit of teaching online and you're like, oh my gosh, this is real, I'm over on this camp now. Then you hear another bit of teaching on YouTube and you're like, oh, I'm over in this camp right now. And their job is to kind of help build us up into maturity, because ultimately being like Jesus, being like Christ, being in that mature state in which we're talking about in Ephesians 4 is not being like that. It's the complete opposite of being like that. It's being very firm, and this is what God says, this is the ways in which I should live and everything like that. And the apostles are designed in there to help, and they're sent by God to help father you in that way, to kind of say, this is where you should be going. And that's the role of a father. I mean, I'm not a father. You're not a father either, in the physical sense. We don't have kids. But ultimately, a father is there to guide you and to help you and to teach you and to help, as you were saying, help you go from being a baby to a teenager to an adult. And I think Ezekiel uses it all the time. Like, if a baby is 30 years old, but it's still like a baby, you know something's gone wrong in the process. And the apostles are there to kind of help build you up and help guide you along those right paths as a father, not a sniffer dog.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Brian, man. Good guy.
Thank you, Brian. Hope you're having a good time. Okay, so another thing, linked with the building of the foundation, is that part of the job part of the role of the apostle is Acts 4 verse...
Acts, did you say?
Yep. Acts 4 verse 32 to 33. Let's go. So this is one of the more common motifs that you'll see throughout Acts, especially early Acts. You see this a lot. Now the full number of those who believed were of one heart and soul, and no one that... Oh my gosh, I can't read right now. What's going on?
What version you read?
Now the full number of those who believed were of one heart and soul, and no one said any of the things that belonged to him was his own, but they had everything in common. And with great power, the apostles were giving their testimony to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and grace was upon them all. So I won't read all the different versions, but this happens a lot where you see there was... was that camera died?
Which
Your
camera?
gone? I think your camera might have disappeared.
Oh, it's fine. They can hear me still.
So you see this a lot where there is a oneness of the people,
Yeah.
and that oneness. So the way that it seems to read is that oneness of the people is part of the things that helps the apostles do the apostling, which is one part of it is also giving their testimony of the resurrection of Jesus. So the gospel is very important to an apostle, because that's who they're representing. Yeah. And so you can't build a foundation and not talk about Jesus and the fact that he died and the fact that he rose again. Do you know what I mean? And because that is the very beginning of the Christ the cornerstone. Yeah. Like if you miss that, then like you've gotten rid of the cornerstone. You know what I mean? But I think it's a really interesting thing that is here to show the relationship between the body and the apostles. Yeah. So the apostles provide the foundation and the fathering and the stability for the congregation. And as the congregation become more like Jesus, so they become one in heart and soul. Mind, no one has a need among them because they share everything. They have all things in common. That also aids the apostles in the preaching of the gospel and the working of miracles. So this is a really common thing in Acts, and I think part of the role of the apostle is to be involved in the preaching of Jesus being the Christ who died and rose again and is alive today. Yeah. And part of their, it's not all of their effectiveness, but part of their effectiveness is the health of the congregation, I think. That's a good way to put it. The best way to put it, as well as the health of the congregation being part of their role. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like this. You see this a lot in the kingdom. It's never like necessarily a one-to-one thing. Like a lot of things are related, and so there's always this like symbiotic thing of as the believers are all together, the apostles are moving in more and more signs and wonders in preaching the gospel and building the foundation of the household of God, which means then the apostles. Do you know what I mean? It's like a continuous thing. So anyway, part of that is that the apostles are involved in. They're very concerned about what's the testimony of Jesus. Yeah. So they're also, especially the early apostles, part of the reason why they needed to add another one is to ensure, for some other scriptural prophetic reasons, but to make that part of the requirement they had for selecting someone else was someone who had been around Jesus, so that they had that same testimony of Jesus. So amongst apostles, there should be a commonality of the Jesus they're talking about. Again, it sounds like, that's, of course, they should be talking about the same Jesus. But if you're hearing, if you hear two apostles and their Jesuses sound like they might have a fight in the street because they're that different. Yeah. It should be like, hang on, something here ain't right. Isn't meshing. Do you know what I mean? Because even though you're two different people and your apostolic areas might be different and you might be focusing on different things, you're sent by the same person. So again, it's the same message from the same person through different people, but to the same house. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's like if you have one parent who's like, no Netflix after 8, and then another parent who's like, you can watch Netflix until 12. That's like, if you're sending mixed messages to kids, they'll be like, first of all, they'll walk all over you. Yeah, they will. That's what, we all know. Parenting 101. That's what's going to happen. But also, there's no actual, that household has a really weak foundation because everything's up for grabs. Whereas if one parent is like, there's no Netflix after 8, and then the other parent is like, there's no Netflix after 8, then people know, okay, this is the same message. Like you guys are united. And so even with apostles, even with they might do things slightly differently. One may have a slightly different nuance to another. There should be a commonality of the testimony of Jesus, the story of Jesus they're telling is the same. Do you know what I mean? This is the same Jesus that they're talking about. And which also means that there should be a concern of what does this action or belief or behavior or whatever, what does this say about who Jesus is to other people? This is a really big thing. So another really good way of seeing is someone an apostle is the things they do, does it say bad stuff about Jesus or does it say good stuff about Jesus? Do you know what I mean? Because if the totality of what you're doing makes Jesus seem worse than what he is, then there's a valid question from the body, from the household, of like, hey, I don't know, is your messaging correct? Do you know what I mean? Or is it not? Are you... so before you get to like, are you an apostle or not? It's like, hey, well, what's happening with your messaging? Because like the more you speak, the worse Jesus seems. And an apostle is always concerned with, I want to make sure that I'm accurately representing Jesus, and I'm not involved in making Jesus seem lower or worse or more insignificant. Do you know what I mean? Because he's the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So anything that an apostle says that puts Jesus lower than that is like it's then misrepresenting Jesus. Do you know what I mean? What do you think about all that?
Well, it's similar to the verse in like Acts 2, isn't it? Or the passage in Acts 2, I should say, which says they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. Everyone was filled in awe, and the many wonders and signs that were performed by the apostles. All believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to anyone who was in need. Every day they continued to meet in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes, ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. It's obviously very similar to that other verse. A lot of parallels there in terms of having all things in common and being together in heart and mind and whatever else. But it's the fact that the foundation of this passage here, and the start of, well, we can say the start's a bit earlier, but the kind of the split off point that they put in this, the Bible put in here is in verse 42. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, and so once they've devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, like the outworking of that foundational building and everything like that, and being sent by Jesus is all these different things, as we were saying. Had all things in common, selling property to anyone who's in need. So there's no need among themselves. They meet together regularly, breaking bread, praising God, enjoying favor. And the fruit of that is that the Lord added to their number daily those who are being saved. And that there is an outworking of it, in not just in terms of building up the church, so like this select small group of people can be built up really, really well and really nicely. As you were saying, that there's a proclamation of the gospel, and the gospel goes out from there, where there's fruit that is bared from is that the word? Bared? Bore?
I don't know what you're trying to say.
Like you bear fruit, you've bared fruit.
They've born.
Is it
born?
Born fruit.
Born fruit, like BORNE.
That is mad.
I think that's right.
Anyway, my point still stands. They're bearing fruit, bore fruit, born fruit.
Bore fruit? Bore fruit.
You bore fruit.
Anyway.
I don't know. Yeah, that's what...
Let's carry on before we just say born. If anyone knows, please let us know. I'm not a linguist. I'm not a linguist. No. Right. Are you finished? Are you done with your...
Yeah, my point was just...
Okay.
That's not just... Basically, my whole point was that's not... there in isolation, verse 4, that is a regular thing that we see throughout Acts, that we see as people devote themselves to the apostles' teaching and things like that. There is fruit that comes from that in terms of there's no need amongst people and things like that, but as well there are many kind of signs and wonders that are going on with the apostles, but ultimately more people are being added and more people are coming in because they're seeing Jesus in in who Jesus is, not like a false one who makes Jesus look bad, but one that elevates Jesus and who he was and everything like that.
Yeah, nice. So let's finish with this. 1 Corinthians 3, from 1 to 9. Bit of a big chunk, but here we go. But I, brothers, could not address you as spiritual people, but as people of the flesh, as infants in Christ. I fed you with milk, not solid food, for you were not ready for it. And even now, you are not yet ready, for you are still of the flesh. While there is jealousy and strife among you, are you not of the flesh, and behaving only in a human way? For when one says, I follow Paul, and another, I follow Apollos, are you not being merely human? What then is Apollos? What is Paul? Servants through whom you believed, as the Lord assigned to each. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. So neither he who plants or he who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth. He who plants and he who waters are one, and each will receive his wages according to his labor. For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field, God's building. Let me carry on, actually. I'll carry on till I feel like stopping. According to the grace of God given to me like a skilled worker, like a skilled master builder, I laid a foundation and someone else is building upon it. Let each one take care how he builds upon it, for no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now, if anyone builds on a foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each one's work will become manifest, for the day will disclose it, because it will be revealed by fire, and the fire will test what sort of work each one has done. If the work that anyone has built on the foundation survives, he will receive a reward. But if anyone's work is burnt up, he will suffer loss, though he himself will be saved, but only as through fire. So this is kind of like two little bits that I want to finish on, which is that there is a humility with apostles.
Yeah.
And so that's part of why I wanted to differentiate in saying actual apostles and people who may call themselves apostles but may not be apostles. Yeah. Because being a servant, and so Paul does this all the time. He'll either call himself a servant or a slave for Christ, a prisoner for Christ. There is a certain humility with apostleship, and part of it is because of the weight of what it is and what it means, and also because of the one who sent. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So Jesus was the ultimate example of humility. So if you're sent by someone, it'll be weird if you're acting differently to how they are. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're sent by, if you work for Manchester United and you're sent to go and do something on behalf of Manchester United, and then you go there in city gear and you're talking about Pep Guardiola, people will be like, oh, like, do you know what I mean? Like, you're not matching up with the way that I know that Manchester United is. So similarly, like, it's weird if an apostle is prideful or very self-promoting. That's like a red flag, because that's not part of the characteristic of the person who sent them. Yeah. So either that means there's a distortion between their relationship with Jesus at some point, and they've still got growing to do, or they're not an apostle, and they're just using the facilities around them to live a nice cushy life. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So there is a very like apostles will be very strong on what the foundation is, and so they won't take compromise on the foundation. Yeah. But they'll also be very humble, and their aim is, how can I serve? What's the best way that I can serve the body in building them up in the foundations? You know what I mean? And then also, apostles do things differently for the same goal. Yeah. So you have this verse 5. So basically, the Corinthians were kind of a bunch of them were arguing. Oh, this apostle's mine. No, this apostle's mine. Well, this apostle's mine. Well, my apostle's better than your apostle. Well, I don't care about your apostle because my apostle does this, this, and this. And Paul's like, what are you talking about? We're not saying this stuff about ourselves. And what does it matter whether your apostle has done this, or your apostle does this, or your apostle does this?
Yeah.
Because all apostles, we're all servants of Jesus.
Yeah.
Because he's the one who assigned us as apostles in the first place.
Yeah.
And so even if we have different outward functions, neither of us are invalidated by someone else's work.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's God's work anyway. So, so he says, I planted, Apollos watered, but God is the one who gave the growth. Neither is he who plants or he who waters anything, but only God who gives the growth.
Yeah. And then it's in verse 9, it says, for we are co-workers in God's service.
Yeah.
You are the field, God's building.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it is more than possible and 100% guaranteed that apostles will look different. And so one apostle, for example, in our own relationship with apostles, the way that the apostles function is very different. So even taking the way that Brian and Kerry functioned as apostles, Kerry was very much going into new nations. That's part of his mandate, is to take the gospel of Jesus to new nations that he hasn't been to, and to help build foundations in those places by connecting with people and other believers. And Brian was very much like based in one locale, providing a lot of scriptural foundation where he was and in the surrounding areas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they did different things. What you could say, one watered, one planted, or whatever metaphor you want to use. But both of their work was building the foundation of the church, and building up the believers into the image of Christ. Because obviously preaching the gospel is you're building the church, you're adding to the body. Do you know what I mean? So the body is becoming more like what it's supposed to look like. And likewise, bringing scriptural foundation is doing the same thing. So there's many ways of qualifying that part. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like if this apostle isn't, seeing 10,000 people saved, then they're not an apostle. Or likewise, if this other apostle, they're only doing healing meetings, and they never do Bible seminars, that doesn't invalidate. Do you know what I mean? It's not as cut and dry as that. The question is, are they building the foundation of this congregation based off what Jesus has patterned it out for them as the cornerstone? If the answer is yes, that means that however the Holy Spirit wants to use them through that, that's how he's decided to do it. Do you know what I mean? Because in the New Testament, most of the 12 original apostles stayed in Jerusalem a long time. Paul and Barnabas were some of the first apostles to really travel quite extensively. And then a lot of them kind of got spread out in different areas and stuff. But there some apostles, stay in one place for a long time, and other apostles traveling here 3 months, here 3 months, here 6 months, here 3 months, here 9 months. Do you know what I mean? It's completely different. And different approaches, different everything. But they were all focused on, we're here to build the church, to build the people of God into being more like Jesus. So it all comes back to Jesus. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think you look at it as we've kind of discussed, you look at it in a worldly sense. We might kind of categorize someone with a really big church or a really big reach or a really big presence on social media or whatever else as better or as kind of greater. We do that kind of with everything. If you've got the most amount of money, you're richer, you're better, whatever it might be. Whereas here is kind of, as you were saying, it's not about the platform. It's not about how big your church is or how big your social media presence is or how many people you have viewing your live streams or whatever it is. That ultimately, as we've mentioned here, there's different things. And as Paul
it's
said,
really possible to be really good at, for example, seeing people saved. You might be an amazing evangelist, and like you can just grow churches because you're really good at talking about Jesus.
Yeah.
Or you might be an incredible pastor, really good at caring for people, and so people love to join your flock because they feel really cared for. But having that doesn't mean that you're an apostle.
Yeah.
Because you can look after people. There's a difference between that there's something that Jesus because Jesus is the one who sent them.
Yeah.
Jesus gives them the ability to help set a really firm foundation. Do you know what I mean? So that's why it's not as cut and dry, like you're saying. Exactly. Of like, I've got 10,000 congregations. Do you know what I mean? Which some people do. That's crazy. So anyway,
yeah. No, that was it, to be honest with you. So that's good.
Great. So that's we're pretty much at time there. So
yeah,
that's a broadly specific look at.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we can really kind of go in a lot into this a bit deeper, but this is a good kind of overview, a good kind of dive into some of the specific parts. And I get that, as we've mentioned earlier, there's a large group of Christians out there who don't necessarily believe that the Ephesians 4 ministry gifts are for today. And so if you are one of those people and you have any questions, please let us know.
Or listen to the previous podcast and then let us know if you've not heard it.
Yeah.
Because we go through that.
Because I mean, even if you do believe in them, are you still a bit confused, or you still a few questions on some of the points you made, please let us know as well. We're more than happy to chat about them. We're more happy to have a discussion with them. But we'll be back same time, same place.
Same places, yeah.
Next week.
Eamon's camera will be not dead by then.
Yeah. I think we just forgot to charge the battery pack, or I did charge
it
enough.
They're 100% tired. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good week. We'll see you next time.
See ya. Bye.